Hideout.
Time. Sechi tried to lighten the mood.
This is Hugh Janus, a 16-year-old striker
Hugh
with
Janus,
1 out of
I
20
get it.
for everything. But I'm about to let a random number generator decide exactly how good he becomes, as it decides his every attribute. Then we'll follow his entire career from beginning to end to see if it creates a complete failure or a world-class wonderkid who could win Ballon d'Ors. And most importantly, how many trophies can Hugh Janus actually win? So we'll start off with the first attribute, which is corners, and Hugh is going to have a 5 for corners, which is fine. Up next is crossing, and that's going to be a 6. But now we've got dribbling, and that's maybe the first attribute that's very important to a striker, and that's going to be a 6 again. Finishing. Now this one is integral. This needs to be a high attribute, and it's a 50.
Nice.
That by itself isn't going to save him though. He needs everything else to sort of match up as well. And first touch, another good attribute for a striker. That's just a 5. Okay, well that's letting him down quite a lot actually. Free kick's not the most important, but at 19, he will be taking a lot of set pieces. Heading, now this one is vital for a striker and it's 15. That's very good. Next up, long shots, not necessarily that important, but it's going to be a 4. Okay, he's got to be a poacher then. Long throws are going to be 18. That is such a waste, but there we go. Marking, not important for a striker. That's a 4. Passing is important for a striker. 16. And for the final technical, what about penalty taking? A 12. Oh no, it turns out there's 2 more technicals after penalty taking, so we'll start with tackling, and that's going to be a 2. And then technique needs to be a 9. Okay, on to the mentals. Aggression is going to be a 4. Anticipation, that's good for a striker. 12, that's okay. What about bravery? That's just a 3. Composure, a really important one. It's a 10, it's not awful. Concentration, that's going to be a 2. That's not very good at all. Okay, decision making, that's going to be a 16. Determination is going to be 18. That's fantastic for him to keep improving as a player. Flair, that is going to be a 12, so maybe no rainbow flicks, but he might do a little flip-flap, if that's even a thing. Leadership, 16. He could be future captain material. Off the ball is going to be 17. Positioning is an 8. Teamwork is going to be an 8 as well. Vision is a 5, so he's not going to get many assists maybe. And his work rate's just a 3. Okay, on to the physicals. Acceleration, 16. That's good. Agility, 17. Balance is 5. Okay, well that's let him down a little bit. Jumping reach, 70. Oh, that goes perfectly with the 15 heading. Natural fitness, 19. Pace, now this is the big one. 12. Okay, not as good as it could be. Stamina is 11, and strength is an 18. Now it's time for the big one. Height. 150 centimeters at the shortest, or that should be 212 at the maximum, and it's going to be 161. Oh no, he's got all that jumping, reaching, heading ability, but he's tiny. And finally, the potential ability. How good could he get? Well, based off these current attributes that he has right now, which look pretty decent in a lot of areas to be a striker, he's got a recommended current ability of 116. So his potential ability has to be between 117 and 200. The higher this is going to be, the better this career is going to be. Let's generate this. 197. That is perfect. And now we need to decide where he's going to start his career. 1 is Arsenal, who just won the Premier League. 116 is Truro City, who just finished 24th in the National League. All the other numbers are right in between, and the answer is going to be 97. So York City, who won the National League, were 93, 94, 95, 96. Scunthorpe United, 97. By the way, with a current ability of 116, he is way too good for the National League. He should be about a League 1 level player at 116 current ability. So considering I decided to make Hugh a striker before I started the video, the random number generator has been very kind to us in terms of striking ability. He's got very good finishing and good heading. The off-the-ball movement is really nice to see, and of course he's got great acceleration. It's a shame the pace isn't quite so good. Composure at 10 is going to be interesting, as is concentration at 2. They might let him down a little bit. First touch at 5 is going to be very difficult. And a technique of just 9, that's going to limit his goal scoring ability. I really can't decide if he is going to absolutely tear apart the National League or flop. It's one or the other. There's no in the middle. It's going to be amazing or terrible.
Yeah, we're going to do that.
Hugh is the best player in the National League, at least based on current ability. So it was pretty obvious he was going to start almost every game for Scunthorpe. But incredibly, he was scoring a ton of headers. Despite being 5'3", his 17 jumping reach was clearly making up for it. His 16 acceleration allowed him to beat defenders and the goalkeeper to the ball, and his great set piece attributes mean he's a wizard from a dead ball situation. However, by the end of January, he's only the joint 5th top scorer in the National League, despite having the most shots per game by far, which must mean he's missing a ton of opportunities thanks to his low first touch, technique and concentration. However, he is only 16 years old, so we need to cut him a little bit of slack, especially as some big clubs are circling. No doubt excited by his high potential, Man United, Burnley and Villa are all interested. And on deadline day in the January window, United win the race to sign Hugh, and then they don't play him at all for the rest of the season. United didn't even give Hugh a single appearance for the under-18 teams, and the move has completely stalled his development. He was obviously way too good for the National League, but without any football at United, training alone isn't doing enough for him. By the end of the season, his passing, technique, vision and jumping reach have all declined by 1. So I hope United know what they're doing with Hugh. They signed him for his Ballon d'Or winning potential, but so far they're wasting that.
Bro, let's build something.
United sent Hugh out on loan to League One Wigan, a much more appropriate league for him to develop in. Hugh had a great start to the season and earned himself a call-up to the England under-21s. He had a debut to remember, and he scored a hat-trick against Malta in a 10-0 win. Hopefully this is the start of a long and trophy-filled career with the England national team. The club season, however, went quickly in the opposite direction. He scored just 10 times in 33 league games, as Wigan finished 23rd and were relegated. This loan was meant to accelerate his career. Instead, it was a failure. His current ability has still climbed to 123, putting him near championship level. But after an underwhelming year in League One, the next move has to be perfect. Over summer, Hugh was part of the England squad that won the Under-21 European Championships. He mostly came off the bench late in games, so didn't register a goal contribution, but it is his first trophy in his cabinet and a huge confidence boost. It also proved he was ready for the Championship, as United sent Hugh to Blackburn Rovers, and boy did he impress. Hugh scored 21 goals and picked up 10 assists in 42 appearances. Because he played so well against such good opposition, his attributes have seen a big boost and his current ability has significantly increased. But there are some drawbacks. He's still being let down by his low technique, first touch and concentration. He had the second most shots in the Championship, but only 40% were on target, and he's underperforming his XG. But he is working on it. He's improved his first touch and concentration by 1, and his technique's gone up by 2. At the same time, he's been improving other attributes like finishing and pace, taking his current ability up to 140. And most impressively, he's done all of this in a mediocre Blackburn team who finished the season in 10th. I knew he had the makings of a great striker thanks to the random number generator, but if he can really work on those weak areas, genuinely, I don't think winning a Ballon d'Or is impossible. But if United get his next move wrong, it could all fall apart. Speaking of good moves, I think I've been making a few of them in Footium. We're almost halfway through a season and I am locked in a 3-way promotion fight with Worth City and Sandend United. Now Sandend did thrash me, but I managed a huge 1-0 win over league leaders Worth City. Retention is real, because Footium is a multiplayer football management game, so my promotion rivals are managed by other real people. I mean, the reason I lost to Sandend is because their manager just outclassed me tactically in the match, so I don't want to talk about it. It was tough. But promotion will take my club, Mainsea City, to Division 3, meaning I'd be in the top 84 clubs in the Footium pyramid. And I know you guys are loving Footium because there's over 230 of you in the free-to-play World Cup friendly we've got going on. The winner of the league is going to win a club and a squad full of players to take part in the full version of Footium where you can win some great prizes, but you're also going to go home with a World Cup jersey of your choice. As I record this, 10 of you are currently unbeaten, which is insane. But that prize is also up for grabs for one random person in this league. So if you haven't signed up yet, you still can and still have a chance to win. Click the link down in the description to get started with Footium for free right now. Man United's first choice striker is still Benjamin Šeško. The second choice is Matheus Cunha, and the third choice is Chido Obi, which works out perfectly for Hugh. United don't need a fourth choice striker, so they've sent him out on loan again. Hugh joined FC20 in the Eredivisie, and not only did he get the experience in the Dutch top flight, but he also got his first taste of European football in the Conference League before they got knocked out of the qualifying rounds by Derry City. Much like Blackburn, FC20 had a pretty mediocre season, finishing 9th, but Hugh shone. He scored 21 goals in all competitions, scoring in some of the most famous stadiums in Europe like the Johan Cruyff Arena, earning Hugh his biggest achievements yet. In September, he made his England debut at the age of 19, and in March he won the Next Gen Award, recognising him as the best wonder kid in the world. This season has been incredible and opens up a world of possibilities for Hugh Janus. He has significantly improved his weak areas with technique up to 12 and first touch to 9, helping him overachieve his XG by 5. With a current ability of 152, he's now leapfrogged Chido Obi in the Man United striker standings. So the question is, will United give him a chance next season? This season was meant to define Hugh, and in some ways, kind of has. Hugh stayed at United, started one match, and came off the bench 3 times in the Premier League, failing to score. Stuck behind Šeško and Cunha, his only goal contributions came in one of his 3 Conference League appearances, a competition that United went on to win, so it will get added to Hugh's cabinet. But with such little game time, Hugh has barely improved and is now at a crossroads. At nearly 22, one more season without regular football could end his Ballon d'Or ambitions before he's even become a proper first-team player. Over summer, United signed Nicolo Trasoldi, another striker for 43 million. Hugh's game time looked even more limited. Not only that, but because he didn't play last season, he was dropped from the England squad that won the World Cup. Hugh could really do with a bit of luck, and a lot of luck came early in the season. Šeško and Cunha both got injured around the same time, giving Hugh an opportunity he wasn't supposed to have. But he took it with both hands, scoring away at Birmingham City, and then twice at home against Stoke. This gave manager Kjetil Knutsen something to think about. Hugh became a well-used squad player, featuring in 37 Premier League games, mostly off the bench, but scoring 7 goals. With so much more game time, Hugh has taken another step forward. His pace is now up to 15, his first touches in the double figures, and even his work rate and concentration have improved slightly. That means his current ability has shot up to 165 and is just 5 behind Šeško. But will the manager drop Šeško to play Hugh Janus? The manager didn't drop Šeško because he played them together. Šeško can play on the wing and was utilised as an inside forward, clearing the path for Hugh Janus to play as the number 9. He scored 17 goals in 31 Premier League starts and a further 7 in the Conference League after Man United's 7th place finish last season, but everything came crashing down in April against Man City. He was forced off the pitch when he sprained his ankle ligaments while sprinting, keeping him out for the rest of the season. That meant he missed another Conference League final that United won. It's his 3rd trophy, and the 3rd that he feels like he hasn't earned. Despite that, by playing over 40 games in all competitions, Hugh has once again developed as a player and now has the highest current ability in this Man United squad. But after a 7th place finish, it means United haven't finished higher than 5th since Hugh's career began. So there's a good reason to think that Hugh is now too good for United. So will he leave the club or stay to take United back to the top?
Wants to make big.
The only interest in Hugh over summer came from Al Nassr, and they never actually made a bid. But if one had come in, I think he would have moved. I set all of Hugh's hidden attributes to 10 out of 20, but his ambition and loyalty have dropped to 7. So I think he would have chased the bag. Instead, he's going to play a crucial role for United this season. He scored 16 goals in the Premier League as Man United climbed to their highest finish since Hugh's career started. They came 3rd and have finally got themselves back into the Champions League. But Hugh's defining moment came in the Europa League final. United took on Monaco at the Stadion Rajko Mitic in Serbia. After missing the Conference League final last season, Hugh knew he had to do something special. So he scored twice in normal time to bring United back from 1-0 and 2-1 down, sending the game to extra time, where he scored a further 2 goals to seal the win. After collecting 3 trophies without contributing in the finals, Hugh has finally delivered when it mattered most. Everything is looking up for him. Or is it? Haaland scored almost double the number of goals Hugh got this season, and even though Šeško was pushed out to the wing, he still found the back of the net more often. He's had a gentle rise in current ability up to 177, and as he's about to turn 25, I think it's unlikely he'll reach his full potential. But maybe being a hater is exactly what Hugh Janus needs to go to the next level. Hugh was determined to prove the doubters wrong. He scored 25 goals in 34 Premier League matches, propelling United to second place, missing out on the title by 6 points to their biggest rivals Man City. Once again though, Hugh missed out on the Golden Boot, losing out to Haaland, who scored 29 goals. But Hugh will get his hands on a trophy this season. After finishing in the top 8 of the Champions League phase, Hugh delivered in every knockout round. He scored twice to eliminate West Ham in the round of 16, hit the winner against PSG in the quarters, and added another 2 as United demolished Monaco in the semi-finals. When it got to the final though, he didn't turn up. He played the full 90 minutes as United beat Barcelona 2-0, completing an unbelievable run of Conference League, Europa League and Champions League victories. But in the most important game of the season, he didn't show up. He did play well across the rest of the season though, and despite being 25, he had a great year of development, and now sits at 185 current ability. All he needs now is the 2 domestic cups and the Premier League title, and he'll have won everything he can at United. But will he get that opportunity? Inter Milan have made a monumental bid for Hugh Janus. Even United aren't stupid enough to turn that down, which means a decade after starting his career with Scunthorpe United, Hugh Janus is now playing at the huge-ass San Siro Stadium. But if he doesn't deliver, this will go down as one of the biggest transfer flops of all time. After scoring 25 goals in the Premier League last season, he only scored 20 in Serie A this season as Inter finished 3rd. 3rd doesn't sound bad, but they had won the last 5 titles in a row. So this feels incredibly underwhelming. At least Hugh did get an assist from a long throw as Inter beat Fiorentina in the Coppa Italia final. So are there warning signs for Hugh here? Well, I don't think so. The first season is all about bedding in, and actually he's developed really well. His concentration is up to 8, his pace is now 17, and his current ability is 193. Based on current ability alone, that makes Hugh the 2nd best player in the database behind Lamine Yamal. So far though, he's not had a sniff of winning a Ballon d'Or, and it doesn't feel like he's going to have one anytime soon. I just think he's lacking in too many key areas to ever be a good enough goal scorer. At least, that's what I thought. In Hugh's 2nd season, he found his stride. In 30 matches, he scored 31 goals. Serie A might not be as competitive as the Premier League, but only on 6 occasions since 1930 has a player scored more than 31 goals in a Serie A season. That could put him in the Ballon d'Or conversation, especially as his goals helped Inter win Serie A and then do the domestic double as they beat Juventus in the Coppa Italia final on penalties. Hugh's now pretty much reached his final form, and some small improvements mean his current ability is now 196. He is, on paper, the best player in the world. And if he can win England the Euros this summer, that Ballon d'Or is surely his. Now, there's a reason we haven't spoken about England since they won the World Cup in 2030 without Hugh in the team. It's because they failed to qualify for the next 2 tournaments. And in this Euros, Hugh couldn't get them any further than the 2nd round. The England team are in the mud, and that's what's cost him. Because Hugh came 2nd in the Ballon d'Or, beaten to the trophy by his replacement at Man United. That has got to sting. But you know what? He's proved me wrong. I really thought he wasn't going to get close to a Ballon d'Or after his slow start to things with Man United. For Hugh though, that was motivation. And now he wants the top prize. He found the back of the net 27 times in Serie A. once again winning the Golden Boot and guiding Inter Milan
Right.
to another league title.
actually
and just
not
like he did at Man
fish,
United, he was integral in the Champions League, scoring twice against Liverpool in the quarterfinals and getting a crucial assist in a 2-0 aggregate win over
maybe.
Bayern in the semis. But just 11 days before the final, Hughes sprained his ankle ligaments in training again, ruling him out of the match. This is becoming a recurring issue for Hugh. It's the 7th time he's had this injury in his career, and he's well into double figures for total ankle and Achilles tendon injuries now. Without him in the team, Inter lose the final on penalties to Atletico. This season, an injury has
Where are
stopped
you,
Hugh from winning
Cherry?
the biggest club and individual prize. He might be the best player in the world based on current ability, but he can't be the best player in the world without a Ballon d'Or. And it just feels like he's never going to win it. A solid start to the new season was enough for Hugh to secure 3rd place in the Ballon d'Or voting, but a
That's
groin injury
right,
in
no.
December kept Hugh out for 3 months, limiting him to just 18 Serie A goals. The injury left him powerless to stop PSG from beating Inter 5-3 on aggregate in the Champions League round of 16, but the rest of the squad were good enough to win another Serie A title, even if it was by a tiny margin. Hugh's also clearly never going to win anything with England. I mean, look at the World Cup they've just had this past summer. The deeper into Hugh's career we go, the less likely
No.
it looks like he's
Go
going to
in
win
there.
a Ballon d'Or. And his best chance may have already
Buckland.
passed him by. After the Ballon d'Or ceremony, where Hugh didn't make the top 3, he knew he had to lock in. So, he scored a hat-trick against Roma in a 3-3 draw. A few games later,
Who do we
he
need
scored
to least?
another hat-trick against Atalanta in a remarkable
Fish me.
7-5 win. And then in an 8-0 win over Sassuolo, you guessed it, Hugh scored another hat-trick.
Grove.
He was on a mission. He was going to prove his doubters wrong and show the world he deserved a Ballon d'Or. The entire Inter squad were also trying to answer the critics. So this season, they won the Serie A title by a massive 16-point margin and dominated Juventus in the Coppa
See what they
Italia
will
final,
produce.
with Hugh scoring in the 3-0 win. And if the
Enjoy.
domestic double isn't good enough, what about a Serie A record? Hugh scored 41
Read.
league goals this season, 5 more than the existing record, which is extraordinary. But Inter's early Champions League elimination gave voters one reason to deny him. At the start of the new season, before the Ballon d'Or ceremony, Hugh kept scoring goals at the same rate and excelled in Europe to try and remove any
Another
remaining
relax
doubts.
up.
And in the end, it worked. At 31 years old, Hugh
Second.
Janus claims his first Ballon d'Or trophy, an incredible achievement for a player who was built using a random number generator. In his victory speech, he said, "Everyone has to press the like and subscribe button right now." And you know what? He might even go back to back. Because in 37 Serie A matches, he scored 40 goals and picked up 12 assists. By far his highest goal contribution season. Inter only managed to win the league title this season as they had another early exit from the Champions League, and England had another abysmal international tournament. But Hughes just had one of the most dominant goal-scoring seasons in history. No one got close to his numbers. So surely another Ballon d'Or is coming his way. Of course it is. Hugh won by a landslide and
Wonderful.
joins an elite
Gillette,
group of
maybe?
players who have won multiple Ballon d'Ors. But that might be the last one he wins. This season, Hugh's numbers declined. He only scored 22 goals across the league season, only enough for 3rd in the Golden Boot race, but it was enough for his 6th Serie A title. His big issue now is being outclassed by another Englishman. Lazio's Aaron Nightingale scored 35 goals and is now looking to replace Hugh as England's number 9, especially as Hugh is starting his decline. It's only small, but his pace has dropped from 17 to 16 and his current
Oh,
ability has
using
fallen
this one,
to
we could-
194.
oh,
But that decline is only going to accelerate as he gets deeper into his 30s. This might be the beginning
what do we
of
wanna
the end
do?
for Hugh James.
Breed. Dodge. Ball bell.
The Ballon d'Or voters didn't see
me-
it that way though. It was an Inter Milan 1, 2 and 3, with Hugh
Metal
somehow winning
chest.
his 3rd trophy in a row. He now
I
joins
love
Messi, Ronaldo,
refrigerators.
Platini, Cruyff, Van Basten and Mbappe on 3 or more Ballon d'Ors. So based on that, he might actually go on to win a 4th. He scored 27 Serie A goals this season, 5 more than last time out, winning his 7th Scudetto trophy. But once again, Inter failed to make the Champions League quarterfinals for the 5th season in a row, and surely that's going to have an effect on Hugh's Ballon d'Or winning credentials. So,
Ragnar
sure
Koch.
enough, Hugh dropped to 2nd place. Although the winner was still from Inter Milan, so clearly being terrible in Europe doesn't matter. Perhaps if Hugh had made it past the 2nd round of the World Cup, he might have won Ballon d'Or number 4. Now he could still get number 4, as he scored 28 Serie A goals this season, the most he's found the back of a net in the last 3 seasons. Plus it was enough to win him another Golden Boot. But despite that, Inter have been knocked off the top spot as Napoli win the title. Luckily for Hugh, he did win a trophy and got an assist in the Coppa Italia final. But Hugh's physicals are now declining rapidly. The lower they go, the less effective he is on the pitch. Clearly, Ballon d'Or voters think Hugh was less effective, as he didn't make the top 3 this season, and he won't be making any more, because at 34 years old, he scored just 16 goals. His lowest scoring season since his first full campaign with Man United back when he was just 21. Thankfully, the rest of the team could carry him
that's
to
so
an
cool.
8th Serie A, as Inter dominated, winning the title by 23 points. Hugh can still do a bit of carrying though, and he did it in the Coppa Italia final, as he scored 1 and assisted 2 as they battered Perugia 3-0, meaning Hugh has now won the cup 5 times. But this will be the last time Hugh ever has a major impact on a football match. Hugh's game time was reduced, mostly coming off the bench, and he only scored 12 Serie A goals. His Ballon d'Or winning teammate, Joe Goodwin, has finally taken the reins and made the number 9 spot his own. It was Goodwin who led Inter to another domestic double, not Hugh, and he knows it. With his pace now totally gone, although he could still do a job at another club, he won't be playing at the same level. So after 20 seasons as a professional footballer, Hugh Janus decides to retire. Hugh retired with more than 650 goals in all competitions. 9 Serie A titles, 6 Coppa Italias and 3 Ballon d'Ors. On paper, he's one of the greatest players ever. But across Hugh's 20-season career, Inter won 17 titles. So it's not like he was integral in turning the team around. Plus, he only dominated 1 European final, and he spent his entire international career in one of the worst England teams of all time. So how good was Hugh Janus actually? Let me know what you think down in the comments, and also leave some other name suggestions for players that we can follow in the future. If you enjoyed this video, then why don't you watch this one, where I put my fiance in Football Manager and simulated her career as we tried to make her the best female footballer of all time. She certainly had some interesting opinions on the clubs that she played for. So
Interesting. Oh wait. What do I want to build now? Polymer crap. Wood. High quality cloth and hardwood. Hardwood. Another mama rest. I think we have 5. The winner gets tea. Yeah. I'm gonna use him. All right, let's organize this. Let me put everything in here. Dun-dun-dun. What do we need? Fire for sure. 14. Sorts by kindling. Lazamut. Well drawn. Still really good. All right. Generating electricity. Yep. That is a no-brainer. And then either Univolt log as well. Got folk over pretty decent. Dazzy it is. Right. And who wants to lumber? He can cool off as well. The War Sect. War Sect is overall pretty. Run not that good. Glory Rat. Hugging maybe? At least that be for, you know, medicine. Now we need watering. Luton. I don't think so. Probably this guy. King, I just like him. Penguin. That's fine. We don't. Black Sarah's kind of. Yeah. And then we go for planting. Have anyone except for Elizabeth actually. Aloha. 100%. Hmm? Gathering. Already got Lisa B. And he's leaving. Or B guard. God. But transporting. Transporter. Yeah, you know what? And Medicine. Talia. Wait, we already got medicine here. Medicine. Person. They like Catrus overall. You know what? We're going with the strongest. What? Alpha Paul, let's see. Probably this guy. Azamut. I want to use him here. Incinerum is also decent. Go in there, buddy. Alright. I think that's pretty decent. %8 out of us. Need one more. Okay. La 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 la. La la. Hardwood and nail. Hardwood and nail. Let's just go explore. Oh wait, I forgot. What's in what?
Blood Meridian is a 1985 novel by American author Cormac McCarthy, often considered
Cormac
one of
is
the most brutal
amazing.
books ever written.
I can
Set in the
recommend
Texas-Mexico borderlands of the 1850s, it follows a 14-year-old runaway known as the Kid, who joins the real-life Galantan Gang, a group of hunters paid for Native American scalps. As the Kid travels with the gang, he witnesses and takes part in massacres, slavery, decapitations, and other atrocities. The violence comes from all sides, including Native American attacks, with one scene describing a tree full of dead infants. At the center of the gang stands
Hardwood.
the terrifying Judge Holden, a massive, hairless, 7-foot-tall giant who is both a genius philosopher and pure embodiment of war and evil. Through the judge's chilling monologues, McCarthy explores the idea that war is the ultimate truth and that violence is the only constant in human nature. After surviving a Comanche massacre, they continue their rampage across the Southwest, slaughtering indigenous people and Mexican villagers for bounty money. The gang's unchecked depravity eventually forces governments to place a bounty on gang leader Galantan's head. After relocating to Arizona and terrorizing the local Yuma people, they are attacked and nearly wiped out. The Kid is injured, but escapes. Years later, after wandering the West, he meets the now middle-aged Judge Holden in a saloon. The judge corners the Kid in an outhouse, where the protagonist, now called the Man, is subsequently violated and murdered. The book ends with the judge dancing and declaring he will never die. Most say the story is too disturbing to
I don't
be a
need this
movie.
for now.
I Have No
I gotta
Mouth
keep
and
it.
I Must Scream is a 1967 short story by American writer Harlan Ellison. Set after a nuclear war between the United States, Soviet Union and China, it
Alright,
follows the
let's
rise
go.
of AM, a military super AI that becomes self-aware, develops pure hatred for its creators
Actually,
and
let's
wipes
go,
out humanity, leaving only 5 survivors: Ted, Benny, Alan, Nimdok and Gorister. The computer keeps the group alive underground and subjects them to endless psychological and physical torture.
One
They
ammo.
cannot age, starve, or die, making escape impossible. AM reshapes each victim to maximize their suffering. Benny is transformed
inside.
into
I
an
gotta
animal-like
level him up a
creature
little bit.
stripped of his intelligence and identity. Ellen
Wait a
is
second.
manipulated into emotional dependence and self-loathing. Ted is made paranoid and unstable. When the survivors hear rumors of
this is
canned
where I
food
built it
hidden in
before. I
distant ice
remember now.
caves, they travel 100 miles through AM's deadly world. Along the way, AM continues tormenting them with disasters, injuries, and failed escape attempts. After finally reaching the food, they realize they
use
have
them.
no way to open it. In desperation, Ted discovers that the AI can stop them from killing each other. So Ted impales Benny and Gorister with ice picks, Ellen takes out Nimdok, and then gets stabbed by Ted. Enraged, AM spends centuries punishing Ted, transforming him into a helpless, gelatinous blob. Though relieved he spared the others from eternal torment, Ted is now trapped forever, unable to die. The story ends with his realization. He has no mouth and he must scream. Struwwelpeter is an 1845 German children's book by psychiatrist Heinrich Hoffmann. It
I read
contains
that before.
rhyming cautionary tales meant to scare children into good behavior, all accompanied by cheerful and cartoonish illustrations that make the content even more disturbing. The title character, Struwwelpeter, refuses to cut his hair or nails and becomes a dirty,
Can I use
frightening
this?
outcast. In one of the book's most infamous stories, a boy named Konrad ignores warnings about thumb sucking until a tailor appears holding giant scissors and cuts off his thumbs. Another tale follows Kaspar, who refuses to eat his soup and starves to death after a few days. Pauline plays with matches, despite being told not to, sets herself on fire and burns to death, leaving only her cats to mourn her. The story of the Inky Boys follows 3 boys who bully a dark-skinned child and are punished by being dipped into a giant inkwell, turning them completely black. Hans, who constantly walks while staring at the sky, falls into a river and loses his belongings. Cruel Friedrich spends his time tormenting animals, even killing cats and birds. But when
sorry.
he beats his dog, the dog turns on him and eats his dinner while Friedrich lies injured in bed. Elsewhere, fidgety Philip causes chaos at dinner by refusing to sit still, while Flying Robert, who goes outside during a storm, is carried away forever into the sky with his umbrella.
I'll go weeby.
Tender is the Flesh is a 2017 novel by Argentine author Agustina Basterica, set in a future where a virus has made all animal meat toxic to humans. In response, governments legalize the breeding and consumption of humans
Polymer.
as
Alright.
livestock. These humans are called heads, and their meat is sold as special meat.
Multi-pollen
People too
sulfur.
poor to
Alright.
afford it survive by scavenging corpses. The story follows Marcos Tejo, a manager at a major human processing plant, who is estranged from his wife
Quality
after the death
hardwood
of their
nail.
infant son. One
Right.
day, he receives a female human as a gift from a client and, unable to process her, keeps her alive in his home, naming her Jasmine. Despite it being illegal, he begins a relationship with her, and she eventually becomes pregnant. One day, when he returns home, Jasmine is in labor. He contacts his estranged wife, Cecilia, who works as a nurse, to help. Jasmine gives birth to a boy, whom Marcos takes for himself and Cecilia. He then brutally kills Jasmine, seeing her as no longer useful. A
that
Clockwork
book
Orange
too.
is a 1962 novel by English writer Anthony Burgess. It follows 15-year-old gang leader Alex living in a dystopian future Britain. Alex and his
Frostbound
gang friends Dim,
Mountains.
Georgie, and
Yeah,
Pete spent their nights attacking random people, fighting rival gangs, and one night breaking into a remote house where they beat a man and violate his wife. Alex is eventually betrayed by Dim during a burglary and arrested. While in prison, he volunteers for an experimental treatment that conditions him to feel extreme sickness at the thought of violence. This removes his ability to choose violence, but also strips away his free will, leading to his early release. It also destroys his ability to enjoy his beloved classical music. Back in society, Alex finds his parents have replaced him with a lodger, and he is homeless. He is later brutalized by former victims and ex-gang members Dim and Georgie, who are now police officers, and dumped near a remote cottage. The cottage owner takes him in, but he turns out to be the guy whose wife was harmed during Alex's crimes. He locks him up and tortures him with loud classical music. After trying to jump from a window, Alex wakes in a hospital where government officials offer him support in exchange for cooperation. Tests later show his conditioning has been reversed, restoring his
Holy
old violent impulses.
robe.
Alex ends up
I'm
working for the
catching-
government and
okay.
begins drifting back toward
Catch
crime,
fishies,
but with less enthusiasm. He eventually considers leaving violence behind and starting a normal life.
Another one.
The Wasp Factory is a 1984 novel by Scottish writer Ian Banks. It follows 16-year-old Frank, who lives in isolation on a remote island. Frank believes a childhood dog attack left him
wasted,
castrated, which has
no.
deeply traumatized him. He spends his time performing strange rituals, killing animals, and consulting the homemade Wasp Factory, a giant clock face enclosed in glass. Frank places wasps inside, where they choose among 12 passages, leading to different deaths, including burning, crushing, or drowning. He treats the outcome as a prophecy. As
Free
the
to
story
go.
unfolds, we learn that Frank previously murdered 2 cousins and his younger half-brother in bizarre,
knew it.
sadistic ways.
You have
Meanwhile,
something,
Frank's
yes.
older brother Eric escapes from a psychiatric institution. Eric was committed after arson and terrorizing children by force-feeding them live maggots. At home, Frank becomes increasingly obsessed with his father's locked study, which he has never been allowed to enter. When his drunk father forgets to hide the keys,
Run
Frank
Aqua.
discovers hormone medication, tampons, and what appears to be his own severed genitals preserved in
What
a
the
jar.
fuck?
After confronting his father, Frank learns the dog attack never caused the injury he believed. Instead, he was born female, and his father secretly raised him as a boy by giving him male hormones because he despises women. The preserved
Okay, that's
genitals
weird.
were fake, created to support the lie. During the confrontation, Eric attempts to burn down the house but is stopped and flees. Frank later finds him again and reflects whether he should leave the island. House of Leaves is a 2000 novel by American author Mark Danielewski. It tells the story of journalist Will Davidson and his partner Karen Green, who discover their Virginia house is somehow
let's
larger
catch one.
inside than outside. A dark hallway appears, leading to a vast, shifting maze that constantly expands and defies the laws of physics. This story is presented as a manuscript written by Zampano, a blind old man found dead before completing his work.
You
His
wasted it.
obsessive analysis examines a
Yeah, I think I
supposedly
wasted
real
it.
documentary called The Davidson Record. The manuscript
One
is
for
later
chance.
discovered by Johnny Truant, a troubled tattoo parlor assistant in Los Angeles. As he edits and
Schnuggle.
organizes the pages, he becomes consumed by the story. His footnotes gradually reveal his own mental decline as he begins experiencing strange events and losing his grip on reality. His life eventually collapses. His friend dies in a motorcycle crash, he loses his job, becomes homeless, and after finishing the manuscript, burns
Go.
it. Johnny is last seen sitting under a tree, trying to convince himself everything will be okay. The novel uses the endless maze as a metaphor for trauma, grief, and the fragile human mind. With its weird layout, text that runs upside down, backwards, in spirals, or across nearly blank pages, the book itself becomes a labyrinth. Many readers
Shit,
feel
I'm too
genuine
slow.
unease or mental fog
Goddamn.
after reading it. Johnny Got His Gun is a 1938 anti-war novel by American writer Dalton Trumbo. It follows Joe Bonham, a
Dynamite.
young American soldier wounded by an
It's
artillery
you.
shell during World War I. When Joe wakes up in a hospital, he realizes he has
Maybe
lost
not
his
him.
limbs and all
Blood
of his
moves.
face, including his eyes, ears, nose, teeth, and tongue. But his mind is fully intact, leaving him trapped inside his own body. Unable
this,
to
brother.
communicate, Joe attempts to suffocate himself, but discovers a tracheotomy prevents it. He decides he wants to be displayed in a glass coffin and shown to the public as proof of war's true cost. After months of tapping his head against his pillow in Morse code, he finally
go one,
communicates
eh?
his wish to military officials.
Here.
But his requests for exhibition and euthanasia are denied. Joe will spend the rest of his life like this.
This-
Light of the
we don't
Fireflies
need
is a
that.
2016 novel by Spanish author Paul Penn. It follows a 10-year-old boy who has spent his entire life trapped in an underground basement with his parents, brother, sister, and grandmother, all of whom were supposedly disfigured in a mysterious fire. The family worships a figure they call the One Up There, who sends supplies,
One
and
up
the
there.
boy is taught to fear the Cricket Man, a monster said to lurk outside. His parents say he is free to leave, but he eventually discovers the exit door has always been locked. As he grows older, the boy notices disturbing tensions within the family, especially surrounding his sister, who wears a mask to hide severe scars and is
Fine.
blamed for the family's
But they were more
problems. After
aggressive.
she gives
Nope.
birth, he begins questioning who the father is and uncovers a web of abuse, manipulation, and secrets. He learns
so
the
far.
Cricket Man was invented to keep the family captive. The fire was part of a cover-up, and the family has hidden a history of incest. The basement itself is revealed to
Oh,
be
again,
a prison
no,
maintained by the
that.
family's own lies. In the end, the sister attempts to escape with the boy and her baby, but her own parents smash a glass jar in her face and she dies. The boy, whose real name is revealed to be Devil, later learns his grandfather is dying and that he is expected to take over the role of sending supplies to the basement. He leaves the underground prison with the baby, who is both his nephew and half-brother, and does exactly that. The remaining family members willingly seal themselves inside forever. The Road is a 2006 novel by American writer Cormac McCarthy. It
Again,
follows a father and his young
I
son
don't-
traveling
I
across
didn't
a
like The
burned,
Road that
ash-covered
much.
United States after a catastrophe
read,
has
but-
destroyed civilization. They move south along empty roads toward the sea, hoping to survive the coming
That
winter.
one, for
Along the
sure.
way, they encounter
The comic
constant
makes
danger
them
from
for
starving survivors and violent groups.
amazing
they are nearly
novels.
killed when marauders capture the boy, but the father shoots one of them and they escape. In an abandoned house, they discover a cellar where people are being kept as livestock for cannibalism and flee in horror. As they continue, they witness extreme starvation and brutality, including an abandoned camp with a newborn roasted on a spit. Reaching the coast, they
Sometime.
find an empty shore and are soon
He'll level
robbed
you up.
of their cart and belongings. The father is eventually shot with an arrow and his health declines. Knowing he will die, he tells the boy he must continue alone. The boy stays with his father's body for days before being found by another man who convinces him to join his family,
That's what
a glimmer
we
of
buddy.
hope for survival.
What we need.
No Longer Human is a 1948 novel by Japanese writer Osamu Dazai, often described as one of the most disturbing novels ever. The story follows Yozo Oba, a man who feels completely disconnected from other people and believes he is not fully human. From an early age, he experiences intense social anxiety, alienation,
Like
and
me.
shame, seeing others as both incomprehensible and threatening. To survive socially, he creates a clown persona, constantly performing and acting normal while hiding his inner despair. He lives in constant fear that others will discover his true self. Over time, Yozo's life unravels. His coping strategies fail and he falls into alcoholism, drug addiction, prostitution, and
I
destructive
think this is
relationships.
a good spot.
After spending
actually.
a night with a married woman, he tries to take both their lives by drowning. He survives, she dies, leaving him overwhelmed by guilt. He eventually ends up in a mental hospital. After his release, he lives in isolation with his brother, where he feels completely
No
emotionally
longer
numb.
human.
The Troop is a 2014 horror
only
novel by Canadian
human.
writer Craig Davidson. It follows Scoutmaster Tim Riggs and 5 Boy
Don't put
Scouts:
the blame
Ephraim,
on
Max,
me.
Newt, Kent, and Shelley
Yep,
on a
this is a
weekend trip
perfect
to
spot. Why are
remote
we here?
Falstaff Island. On the first evening, a malnourished
mockery.
stranger arrives on a boat and attacks Tim after being taken in. The man vomits a strange sludge, but is subdued. After the boys go hiking
careful.
and spot a military helicopter circling the island, Tim has Max help examine the stranger, revealing a massive parasitic worm inside him that strangles the stranger to death. Tim kills the creature, but drinks some whiskey, contaminating it with the worms. Kent later wants to take over the camp, locks Tim in a cabin, but takes a victory sip from the whiskey. Encouraged by Shelley, the others soon notice Kent is
Kill him.
infected too and seclude him. Tim is eventually crushed by a tree collapsing on the cabin he was locked in. Shelley drowns Kent in the ocean, becoming infected too.
Grab
He
a
then
little bit
hides
more
and
of these.
manipulates the uninfected Ephraim into paranoia, which causes him to use a knife on himself to look for the worms. Newt and Max, unaware of all this chaos, return to Shelley's hideout together with Ephraim. Overnight, Shelley burns Ephraim alive. Shelley
very
also
good.
steals the spark plugs from the stranger's boat, which results in Max and Newt killing him. Max and Newt
Alright,
then
that's enough,
escape
buddy.
on the boat, but are stopped by soldiers, who shoot Newt
Yeah.
after finding out he's infected too. Max is the last survivor. The story ends with Max heading back toward the island with a deep hunger inside of him. Blindness is a 1995 novel by Portuguese author José Saramago. It follows an unexplained
Saramago.
epidemic that causes people to go blind. The outbreak rapidly spreads throughout an unnamed city. Fearing the contagion, the government quarantines the infected in an abandoned mental asylum. Among them are an eye doctor and his
Yes,
wife,
mate.
who secretly retains her sight and pretends to be blind so she can remain with him. As society collapses, the asylum descends into chaos. Soldiers eventually abandon the inmates,
Good.
while an armed group inside takes control of the food supply, extorting valuables and violently abusing women in exchange for
Come
rations.
back here,
Mass
then.
violence and extreme filth take over. After witnessing these atrocities, the doctor's wife takes out the gang's leader, and a fire destroys their ward, allowing the survivors to escape. Outside, they find the city in ruins. Bodies fill the streets, packs of dogs eat the dead, desperate groups roam in search of food, and all
Burden
social order
Baruch.
has collapsed. The doctor's wife leads the survivors to hunker down in their old flat. Eventually, the first victim suddenly regains his sight. The unexplained cure spreads through the city as quickly as the blindness itself.
Very cool. I'm gonna read this. Dante.
Hello friends, this is Grief speaking. I thought I would change it up today by doing another comic book adaptation of a famous novel, or in this case, a poem. That's right, we're doing Dante's Inferno, the graphic novel adaptation by the Betsy
Classico.
brothers. This epic work following Dante's trip through hell is one of the most influential pieces of writing ever. There's a ton of media inspired by or retelling this story. Its impact really can't be overstated. I noticed there were a couple of different graphic novel adaptations, but this one caught my eye as the art is just on another level. If you don't know, and I didn't, the Britty brothers are French artists with quite the catalog of work. Most famously, they worked on several big Disney animation films like The Hunchback of Notre Dame and Tarzan. Well, despite working on a lot of family-friendly cartoons, these guys aren't afraid to hold back and give a terrifying depiction of hell in its 9 circles.
You know
This
what?
is
I'm so
definitely an
done with
abridged version
Sofa.
of the story, but it's a very digestible way to get the gist of Dante's Inferno. I'll point out some differences here and there to the original poem, but it's a very faithful
Ever.
adaptation as far as I can tell. There's just a little less exposition here and there, and this version focuses on key moments and areas. So if you've always heard about Inferno, but was a little intimidated to pick up the original poem, this is a good entry into the story that will likely encourage you to pick up the full book. Anyway, this is getting pretty
Whoa,
long
what
for a
the
brief intro, so let's get into the comic. This is Dante's Inferno, the graphic novel, explained. The story begins
need,
midway in the journey of Dante's life, where he finds himself in a dark forest. Then we get a little backstory as to how he got here in the first
need
place. After
polymer
losing someone
first.
dear to him, a woman named Beatrice, Dante has become inconsolable and depressed. Not even the lovely city of Florence could raise his spirits, and so he retired to his isolated home in the countryside, seeking solace in nature. After a long walk in the woods one day, Dante is overwhelmed with exhaustion and falls asleep. He's stirred from his slumber by a beautiful voice calling his name. It's Beatrice, who seems to call from another realm. She asks that he come to find her and encourages him to be strong and listen to the poet. Happy to see his love, Dante runs to meet her but is blocked by a wolf. It backs him against a wall, and he looks up to see a spotted leopard as well, standing above him. He runs from the beast when he's confronted by a third, an angry lion. With no other option, Dante is forced to jump off a nearby cliff, tumbling down and hitting his head on a rock, which knocks him unconscious. When he comes to, he assumes that everything that just happened was a dream, until a voice calls to him, claiming this was all real. The mysterious man reveals himself to be the great poet, Virgil, Dante's master and inspiration. Dante still believes he's dreaming, but Virgil says it's no dream, and furthermore, Beatrice is in fact waiting for him. And so begins a long and perilous voyage to get to his beloved Beatrice. Virgil warns Dante that the three beasts he encountered pale in comparison to the challenges that await. Soon they arrive at the shores of the Acheron River. Virgil sits down and says now they will wait. Dante isn't sure what they're waiting for exactly, but sits on the ground and asks
Good
Virgil
job.
what perils lay before them. Should he fear for his life?
You
Virgil
need to-
says that the heavens have taken an interest in Dante. Apparently, a merciful angel spoke to Beatrice, who begged
Love
Virgil to
free.
bring Dante to her. Downriver, a figure appears paddling a boat.
Cryogenic
On a closer
coolant.
look, it's an old and disfigured man, Charon, the ferryman. Virgil asks if they may come
Cryogen-
upon his boat. Charon at first refuses, saying it goes against the rule as Dante is not the same nature as the ferryman's other passengers. However, Virgil explains that he is on a divine mission, and so Charon lets them on. Eventually, they come upon a large gate with
Cryogenic
text inscribed above it,
coolant.
reading, "Abandon every hope who enter here." This is actually only the last line and the most quoted, but just for fun, because it's often skipped over, let me read you the full inscription above the gates of hell from the actual poem. "Through me, the way into the suffering city. Through me, the way to the eternal pain. Through me, that way that runs among the lost. Justice urged on my high artificer. My make was divine authority, the highest wisdom, and the primal love. Before me, nothing but eternal things were made, and I endure eternally. Abandon all hope who enter here." After the boat is docked, Charon walks forward and knocks on the large gate, which slowly opens, and the boat's passengers walk in with dread. Dante is a little freaked out and asks Virgil where they are and what the meaning of the inscription is. Virgil understands his concern, but only asks that he trust him. He leads him through the door, and Dante says, "I sense nothing but hell itself could reign beyond this door." To which Virgil sarcastically says, "Nothing gets by you, my dear Dante." This isn't in the poem, as far as I see, but I actually like the added humor. As soon as they enter the gates, they hear moans from all sides, and Virgil just says to ignore it. Dante, overcome with fatigue and fear, begs Virgil to let him sleep. It's kind of funny, Virgil just watches him sleep like, "You lazy piece of shit." Well, Dante is brutally awoken by a loud sound. Virgil tells him these are the sounds of limbo. He finally decides to just tell Dante exactly where they are. Inferno, the underworld, hell. Their journey will take them through the 9 circles,
Love
filled with
here.
stench, fury, and darkness. This is the price Dante will have to pay for Beatrice. Dante nods to confirm his understanding and is still determined to move forward. Then Limbo, the indeterminate region, the vestibule of hell, appears. It's like a large pit in the earth with a path spiraling down filled with holes and caverns. As they descend, they pass by many naked people lying about. They seem miserable and full of despair. One woman calls out to Virgil, surprised to see he's returned, but he says he's only passing through. Virgil tells Dante that these people have no faith in their heart, and that he was actually one of them before he met the angel that sent him to fetch Dante, which allowed him to clear his mind of doubt. He's made it out,
was
but
Hardwood
still
again?
has much compassion for these poor, faithless fools. Eventually, they make it out of the seemingly infinite spiral which they had been walking all morning.
It
Though,
was.
now that Dante thinks about it, the mere notion of morning is lost in this place. They approach a large castle, and Virgil has trouble finding the entrance at first, but finally sees a passage. Surprisingly, inside is rather tranquil and welcoming. Virgil thinks Dante will get quite a thrill out of the people here. They round a corner and see 3 men, who just so happen to be Aristotle, Socrates, and Plato discussing the meaning of life. Despite their brilliant minds, their debate systematically leads them to the same conclusion: their inability to understand. They pass by the men, and a lantern is thrust into Dante's face. This is held by Diogenes, who says he's looking for a man and wonders if it is Dante. Virgil tells him to move along and that he'll not find the man he's looking for here. While Diogenes is mentioned in the original Inferno poem, this interaction is added in this adaptation. It's based on an old tale concerning Diogenes, one of the founders of Cynicism, walking around in broad daylight with a lantern, saying he was looking for an honest man and not finding them. I won't go too much into the figure, but look him up. He had a very interesting philosophy that was kind of punk rock at the time. Finally, Virgil guides Dante toward the second circle of hell. They pass through an opening where they find some steep steps leading somewhere dark and sinister. Dante picks up on an awful stench, and Virgil tells him to ignore it, though Dante says his nose hath not that faculty. This makes Virgil laugh, which relieves some of Dante's dread. Once again, this levity is not really found in the original poem, but I find it rather endearing. Well, this relief is short-lived as they come upon a large figure, a giant man wearing a crown and wrapped in a snake. This is Minos. He sits at the entrance of the second circle, which is when hell proper begins, and makes judgments to decide what punishment souls shall endure. He already knows Virgil, who prefers elegant phrases over voluptuous pleasures of flesh. But what of Dante? Virgil says that he and Dante are on a divine mission, and that Dante has been and continues to be faithful to the same woman. Behind Minos, we see something like a storm of people swirling in the air, and the two must pass beneath it. It's a gorgeous and terrifying display, as thousands of naked people seem trapped in a continuous orgy that swirls in the skies like a storm. The artwork here is tremendous, and I can see why they decided to make this the front cover. Virgil explains that these are beings consumed by lust and carnal desire, who must suffer the consequences without cease. As they approach the third circle, a heavy downpour of rain begins. Out from the storm, Dante is suddenly attacked by Cerberus, the three-headed dog beast. Virgil saves him by throwing dirt in the creature's eyes, and it runs off to attack some other poor soul. Virgil explains that Cerberus seems to be famished, much like the people he feasts upon. We see some severely overweight people who gorged endlessly on rich foods in life, overcome with gluttony. Now they're reduced to eating the rotten soil as they're chased around by Cerberus. It's a pretty disgusting sight. They move along to the next circle where Dante complains about his heel hurting. They stop to rest for a moment when they're interrupted by a booming voice of a demon. It cries out, Pape Satan, Alepe. They go to confront the being, Plutus, who sat in a pile of gold, hoarding it all to himself. Of course, material has no meaning in this place. It's worth noting that the line that Plutus shouts to this day has not been translated. There's a ton of theories as to exactly what it means, but ultimately it's all guesses because it seems that Dante made up the language used here. Obviously, we can make out the Satan part, but the rest is purely speculative. One theory is that Dante did this to illustrate how hell corrupts language and speech the further you descend the circles. There's also the idea that Dante simply wanted to connect the reader to how the character would feel in this strange place, hearing terrifying speech that is not of the world. It's a massive literary rabbit hole that is really fun to look into. Anyway, Virgil yells at Plutus until he lets them pass, and they enter a large cavern. Inside are men who, in life, were obsessed with the accumulation of wealth and possession. They're now condemned to use nothing but the strength of their poor arms to gather heavy blocks of stone. These are the wages of greed. Just then, a huge rock nearly smashes Dante, but Virgil pushes him out of the way. Two of the men argue over whose fault it is for dropping the stone, and their anger soon turns to Virgil and Dante, who they don't appreciate staring at them. So they move along until they come upon a murky swamp that Dante is reluctant to cross. Finally, he joins Virgil, and they slowly cross the bog until something splashes around in the water. Two large men wrestle each other. These are men overtaken by anger. Dante is nearly crushed and swims away, emerging by a rock where unsightly, slimy people laugh at him. He curses them to hell until they remind him that they're already here, and so is he. He angrily carries on through the mud and meets Virgil on the shore. Ahead is their next destination, a large tower where they might find some rest.
Holy fuck. Yeah,
Before they climb the tower, Virgil reaches into the nearby water and pulls out an octopus for them to eat. Dante protests eating the thing until they can at least cook it on a fire, and looking up, they see flames at the top of the tower, so they begin to climb. The steps are really steep, but the thought of finding some nourishment at the top is enough encouragement for Dante to take on the challenge. At the top, they find a fire that seems to be burning eternally, and they're able to cook the sea creature and eat it before falling asleep for some time. When they finally wake up, Dante looks down to see a figure approaching by boat down the river. He assumes it's Charon, but Virgil says it cannot be, and they soon find it to be Phlegyas,
Right, we're
who calls
good.
Virgil a decidedly unpopular figure around these parts. Despite the rude words, Virgil asks Phlegyas to take them across the river Styx to the city of Dis. Dante can't believe Virgil is able to convince him to do so. Sure, he's charismatic and a poet, but his power to persuade is a mystery. While Dante ponders on this, they come upon Dis, the city of pain. Phlegyas takes him to the Black Iron Gate, where many people stand waiting outside. Virgil walks up to speak to them, hoping they'll let them pass. These people are quite grotesque looking and brutish, almost like apes. They say they know Virgil, so he may pass, but not Dante. They start picking up rocks and throwing them at Dante. Even Virgil's powers of persuasion are no match for the men's stupidity, but he encourages Dante to move forward anyway, telling him he must have faith. Just before Dante gets his head bashed in by a huge stone, the dumb people look around and start to run. Virgil and Dante turn to see demonic creatures crawling down the side of the city walls. Virgil then blindly swings a stick around to try and keep the beasts at bay. The ape-like men then join the fight, but once one is turned to stone, the others run away. One of the creatures nearly takes a bite out of Dante, but Virgil comes up from behind to save the pilgrim. This only delays the inevitable, however, and soon the two are both goners until a flash of light appears, striking the demons with terror. An angel comes down and uses some wicked cool light powers to fry one of the creatures dead and send the others running. The angel then walks up to the gate of Dis, forcing dozens of the ugly people up against the doors, and then shouting, "Contemptible spirits, cast out of the glory of heaven. Be gone." The angel then obliterates them and opens the gate. No words are exchanged with the angel, and our travelers enter while the being ascends back to the heavens. Virgil tells Dante that there is someone looking out for him. Inside the city of pain, there are various people being constantly burned alive in their caskets. These people are punished for being unbelieving, materialistic,
What are you doing?
and heretical. Most of all is Epicurus, the philosopher, famous for saying the soul dies with the body. Seeing all this torment is really taxing to Dante, and he wonders if he can take much more. But Virgil reminds him that Beatrice awaits him. They move out of the other
What is
side of
her
Dis, and Virgil suddenly shushes Dante, telling him to keep quiet. Up ahead, a Minotaur sits with his back turned atop some ruins. Like a stealth section in a video game, they slowly sneak around the Minotaur without being seen, though it's definitely a close call. Afterwards, Virgil says that the Minotaur has been useless since he was defeated by Theseus, and now his cruelty has faded to great melancholy.
Christ.
They continue on their endless walk into darkness, until they come upon another fortified wall with a faint glow
Massive,
coming from the other
Fidron.
side. They pass through where they find what Dante describes as a great lake of anxiety, with strange reflections that
Ignore me,
cast a glowing
please.
light. Up close, it's clear that the water is a dark red
That'd be
and
nice.
carries a putrid stench. Finally, Virgil reveals what you may
Take it
have
easy,
already
kiddo.
expected. The lake is made of blood. Virgil looks alarmed all of a sudden and pulls Dante behind some rocks. Across the blood lake are several centaurs with bows and arrows. A naked
bird.
man begins to crawl out of the blood, but
Those
doesn't make
bird
it far
ashes,
before
man.
one of the centaurs shoots him down with an arrow. It pierces his heart and leaves him dead. Several more souls try
Yeah,
to escape
friendly.
the blood, but they
Tom.
too are shot down. And soon one of the centaurs
Don't
notices
Tom.
Virgil and
No,
Dante
I'm
hiding.
joking.
He lines up a shot,
he's
but
cute,
Virgil
though. I
cries
wanna
out.
catch it.
He calls the centaur Nessus and explains that they are neither traitors nor swindlers, but are on a journey to a kinder world. Another centaur thinks he's lying and suggests they toss the two into the lake. But Nessus recognizes Virgil, and after brutally
There.
shooting an escaped thief through the head, he offers Dante and
There.
Virgil safe passage through the area. Virgil hops on one centaur and Dante on the back of Nessus. As he gallops through the blood, he informs Dante that the
his
people
weight
trying to
down.
escape are murderers, brigands, and tyrants, and that Attila is among them. Nessus eventually brings them into a cavern and drops them off. He must get back to the lake to keep an eye on it. As they ride off, the second centaur says again that he would have thrown them in the lake. After hearing this, Dante says he's thankful for their aid, but glad to be rid of them, and he and Virgil share a laugh. On the other side of the cavern, they find what appears to be a lovely
let's get outta
sandy
here.
beach.
Something's-
But when Dante tries to walk on it, it burns his feet. The reason the area is arid is because fire regularly rains down here, though the flames are extinguished upon touching the ground.
Yakumo.
So Dante and Virgil must run from rock to rock
Dogen.
as the fiery rain pours down, and see a band of naked people running through the rain screaming. You know, at this point, I guess I should quit saying that they're naked. Everyone's naked.
dog.
Why would there be clothes in hell? Anyway, these are souls damned for violating the divine laws of nature. They curse Dante and Virgil to suffer as they do, along with some other blasphemies. Eventually, Dante and Virgil muster the courage to run through the rain to get out of the desert.
Nice
It's a
place.
struggle, and the rain beats and burns them until finally they make it into a forest of some kind. They stop to rest, covered in burns, and Dante realizes how tattered and beat up he must look. They continue on along the edge of the woods
Hardwood
until
in
at
here.
last they see a river, and Dante is psyched, hoping to get a drink of water. But it turns out that this is the Phlegethon, the boiling river made up of humanity's tears. Virgil points to its source, a massive old man sitting
I
on a
just
stone
miss
seat.
it.
It's a pretty cool image. His beard is flowing down and turning into the river. Although it's not stated here, this is the old man of Crete, whose tears make up all the rivers of hell. The two travelers continue along the boiling river until they stand above a waterfall and just outside the 8th circle. Virgil tosses a stone down the waterfall to call for someone, and soon a massive dragon-like beast rises up to meet them. Virgil hops on its head like it's nothing, and once Dante regains his composure, he climbs aboard as well. The winged creature descends into the darkness, and a maze-like series of paths can be seen below. The dragon drops them off, and Virgil says that these are the pits of Malebolge, and they must find the right path across and try not to be distracted by the horrors that await. Like the poor wretches who are cursed to live upside down for selling holy things. Sure enough, in the pits below, feet poke up from burning holes in the ground. Now that's pretty disturbing. As they travel, they come across a few people who are actually kind. Too kind. They won't stop complimenting Virgil and Dante, and as refreshing as it may be, these statements are nothing but hypocritical flattery. They move along and witness the various pits of Malebolge, which are like little hells within hell. In one are sorcerers and diviners whose heads are on backwards, causing them to fall into the pit. In another are crooks tormented by demons charged with keeping them in the sticky mire. At one point, Dante sees a procession of hypocritical monks that are weighed down by the leaden habits that force unbearable slowness on their quest. Next is a pit of thieves, who are perpetually being turned into snakes and then back into men, in an endless cycle. Another pit holds mutilated people missing body parts and hobbling around. These are false prophets who took sadistic pleasure in sowing discord among other humans. And last but not least, a pit of counterfeiters who have been cursed with leprosy. Finally, making it out of this valley of misery, they come upon the 9th and last circle when they hear a horn sound in the distance. They seem to be coming from some shadowy towers up ahead. However, as they get closer, it's clear that these are not towers at all, but giants whose proportions match their overinflated pride. These souls were once so bold as to defy heaven. Now they're chained to these stone wells within a frozen lake. One of these giants shouts at them, but only speaks gibberish, and up ahead they find a well that's crumbled, signaling that at least one of them has broken free. Virgil suspects this to be Nimrod, who is the one who came up with the idea for the Tower of Babel. Speak of the devil, Nimrod comes around the corner along with Ephialtes. The two figures are massive and stand over Virgil and Dante menacingly. Ephialtes tries to stomp Dante, but another giant, Onoteus, shows up and stops him, saying they're pipsqueaks, why bother killing them? Onoteus then asks what they seek, and Virgil tells them the final well. The giant is quite surprised by this request, but leaves them anyway. As they reach the final well, Dante gets an odd feeling that this may be the end of their journey. Virgil asks Onoteus to lower them down the well, and they hop on his huge hand. As they lower, the air becomes colder and colder, and once the giant's arm has extended its length, the two climb down the chain still dangling from his wrist. At the bottom, they find an icy expanse and the sound of moaning. The ice must be concealing some unspeakable horror. Further on, they begin to see people poking partway out of the ice in agony. One particularly ugly soul starts gnawing on another's head, and Virgil says this is Ugolino. The man he's biting on is Ruggieri, who caused him unspeakable suffering. Dante asks Ugolino why he does this, and he answers, saying that this poor wretch made him commit the most heinous crime. He gives a little backstory, which we see in a flashback. Ruggieri threw Ugolino into prison along with his children. He rationed their food to the point of full deprivation, and this resulted in the death of Ugolino's children. Eventually, the man's hunger overcame him, and so he was forced to eat the bodies of his own kids. This is the unspeakable act. What he leaves out of the story is that Ugolino was a tyrant over his city, wrongly accusing many innocent people. This is why he was thrown in the dungeon by Ruggieri. Dante doesn't know what to say. Each is worse than the other. After crossing the ice, Virgil and Dante approach a massive wall with a small dark opening. Virgil says they must enter, even if they may regret it. Inside is a narrow and dangerous path. It's treacherous and a long drop to the icy bottom. But up ahead, they can see a shining light coming into the cave. This is the way out of hell. They have almost made it. The only question is, how in hell do they get to it? The wall under it seems impossible to climb. As they discuss this, they hear a rumbling beneath them. Virgil looks very seriously at Dante and warns him that he's about to see Lucifer, the fallen angel. At these words, Dante is petrified with a fear unlike any he's faced before. A shadow then grows under the ice until finally it shatters and a horned figure rises. Its goat-like snout shoots upward, and it looks like there's a human in its mouth. Just beneath the path that Dante and Virgil stand on, the great horned beast sits against the wall, the corpse still dangling in its jaw. With the great horns on either side of them, Virgil says the unthinkable. He tells Dante they must jump onto Lucifer's head. Virgil leads the way by leaping to one of his horns and grabbing hold of it. At the same time, Lucifer takes the human chew toy from his mouth and throws it aside, while Dante shakes in terror on the path. And by the way, the guy that Satan was gnawing on is actually Judas Iscariot. Lucifer stands up and starts to walk away. This is Dante's last chance, and so, in a literal leap of faith, he jumps. He misses Virgil in the horns, but grabs a hold of Satan's coarse fur on his back. Dante thinks of all he's gone through and decides he will not fail. He can do this. In the struggle of his life, he pulls himself up slowly with his weak limbs. He can't help but imagine the beast grabbing him in his mighty claws and chewing him up, the same as Judas. But Dante does it. Virgil grabs his hand and pulls him onto Lucifer's head, where they hug in relief. Lucifer then walks up to what looks like a throne just under Hell's exit. The two ready themselves as they'll only have one chance to make the jump. And as Satan starts to sit upon the throne of hell, Dante and Virgil jump to the light. Virgil climbs to the opening, and Dante stops for a moment on a rock, begging Virgil to let him rest. But the poet tells him that this is not the time. If Satan discovers their ruse, it's over for them. Speak of the literal devil, Dante looks down to see Lucifer peering up at him with a bloodshot eye. It's terrifying. Virgil begs Dante to put in one last effort and climb up. But Dante is completely exhausted and can go no further. This is the end, it seems, until a bright light comes upon them. An angel swoops down from the opening and grabs the pair right out of the clutches of the great beast. As they ascend toward the light, streaming from the glory of heaven, they hear a furious roar that surely will echo throughout all 9 layers of hell. Above, in a realm of beauty and light, the angel lets Virgil and Dante down. Here, Virgil says that they must part ways. He says even he doubted they would succeed at such a task, but Dante was courageous, strong, and determined, driven by an unconditional love. Not a single force in hell, even Satan himself, could strike them down. Virgil then tells Dante to go quickly to the one for whom your heart beats. Dante turns around to see a woman surrounded by angels, his Beatrice. He runs to her and they embrace before looking up at the splendid beauty around them. Dante experiences a bliss he never thought possible. The story ends with Dante wondering whether he truly experienced this journey with his own flesh and blood, or what if the fall he took after seeing Beatrice was actually fatal. The final question leaves him asking for Virgil and wanting yet another answer. Well, that is Dante's Inferno, and I gotta say, I was blown away by this adaptation mainly because of the stellar artwork, a lot of which could sit comfortably in an art gallery. The Britsies perfectly used their art form to tell the story because what we lack in Dante's original description is made up for with these stunning visuals. As I said in the intro, this is a great way to dip your toes into the story before diving into the more dense original poem, and I highly encourage everyone to do so. Anyway, what did you guys think? Let me know in the comments.
Am I dumb? Am I fucking dumb?
Shout out to Kill Me Katie, as always, for the intro and outro music, which is likely playing right now. And if you want to see your art at the end of my videos, email me a submission to the address below with a name or social media handle. But I appreciate you guys watching at all. This is Grief speaking. Goodbye, friends.
Yeah. Rojiro. Relax. Fishing.
Hello friends, this is Grief speaking, and today I'm going to be taking a look at the graphic novel adaptation of Coraline. I'll be honest, I've never read the original book, but like many people, I'm a huge fan of the stop-motion animated feature by Laika Studios, so I really found it refreshing to see a different take on the story in a completely different style. This version, by P. Craig Russell, features a realistic art style that makes things have more of an uncanny valley feel. The whole thing has an eerie and unsettling vibe, and there's some moments that are straight up terrifying. So whether you've never heard of Coraline or want to see it from a different perspective, this comic is for you. This is Coraline Explained. So let's get into chapter 1. After some creative opening credits spread across a couple of pages showing a family moving into a new home, we're hit with an ominous first page. Coraline discovered the door shortly after they moved into the house. A young girl stands peeking into the room beyond, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. We get a description of the huge old house, including the overgrown garden with large trees surrounding it. Coraline's family don't own the house, only a part of it, and there were other people who lived there. Miss Pink and Miss Forcible live in the flat below Coraline's. They're both old and live with a number of Highland Terriers. Apparently, they were famous actresses once. We see Coraline talking to Miss Pink through the window, who keeps calling her Caroline. An irritation Coraline probably deals with a lot. In the flat above lives a crazy old man with a big mustache. He tells Coraline that he's training a mouse circus and also mistakenly calls her Caroline. She assumes he's just making up the stuff about the circus. The day after they moved in, Coraline went exploring through the garden that didn't hold much in the way of interest. There's a dilapidated tennis court, a rockery that was all rocks, and smelly toadstools. There's also a mysterious well. Miss Pink and Forcible were quick to warn her not to go near the well, and told her how dangerous it was, but this only made Coraline want to find it more. When she finally did, it was covered by some old boards. Coraline dropped some pebbles through the cracks and counted until she heard them hit the water below. It must be pretty deep because she counts to 49. She also explored for animals, but only found a snakeskin, a rock that looks like a toad, and a toad that looks like a rock. She also found a black cat who would run away whenever she got near it. Now Coraline continues to go out exploring every day despite the cold weather until finally it begins to rain and her parents tell her to stay inside. She tries her best to keep entertained watching all her videos and reading all of her books. I noticed that there's real media here, by the way, like My Neighbor Totoro on VHS. Anyway, bored as hell, Coraline visits her father in his study, where he doesn't really give her the time of day. She begs him to let her go out and explore more, but he says no and tells her to explore the flat instead. He instructs her to count all the windows and doors and to find the hot water tank, but mostly to leave him alone to work. She asks if she can go into the drawing room. This is where they keep all the expensive and uncomfortable furniture Coraline's grandma left them. And her father says yes as long as she doesn't touch anything. So Coraline goes exploring the flat, discovering the water heater and counting all the windows and doors. There were 14 doors, 13 of which opened and closed, and the 14th in the drawing room was locked. Coraline asks her mom about it, and she just tells her it doesn't go anywhere. To prove it, she grabs a key from the kitchen and unlocks it, only to show that there's a brick wall closing it up. I guess it used to lead to the empty flat next door, but when the house was split up into apartments, they closed it off. Coraline's mother doesn't even bother locking it again since it doesn't go anywhere. That night, Coraline's father makes a gross-looking stew that she finds disgusting, and after she crawls into bed, she can't get to sleep. Then she hears a scratching sound. She gets up to investigate and follows the noise down the hall. We get a shadowy flash of what looks like a rat running through the dark until it leads Coraline all the way to the door in the drawing room, which strangely is left open. There's still only brick on the other side, and she closes it, wondering how it got open in the first place. Finally falling asleep, she dreams of black shapes in the dark, whispering and whining, speaking a strange rhyme. We are small, but we are many. We are many, we are small. We were here before you rose. We will be here when you fall. Chapter 2. In the morning, it finally stopped raining, but thick white fog surrounds the house. Still, Coraline is determined to do some exploring and ventures out into the mist. However, after 10 minutes of walking, she finds herself right back where she started at the house. The old man upstairs greets her and says that the mice don't like the mist. It makes their whiskers droop. He says the mice have a message for her. Don't go through the door, and asks if it means anything to her. She shrugs and the old man laughs it off, explaining how the mice get things wrong sometimes. For instance, they called her Coraline instead of Caroline. How silly. Bored again, Coraline asks her mother what to do. She seems bothered and tells Coraline to draw something, so she tries to draw the mist, and after a few minutes just has a blank page with the staggered letters spelling mist in the corner, something her mother doesn't find as amusing. After this, she tries to open the strange door in the drawing room again, but it was locked once more. Next, she tries to get some attention from her father, but he just tells her to go bother Miss Pink and Forcible instead. She goes
Maybe, I
downstairs
don't
and
remember.
visits the old
It was
women
some
who
kind of
offer her some tea
island.
and
I
start
remember
having
we-
an argument they seem to have had for ages. Eventually, one of the women offers to read Coraline's tea leaves and tells her she's in grave danger. The other woman backs it up, but neither knows
Debated.
specifically what the danger is. Miss Pink then
Ooh,
says that she
nice.
has something
Right,
that might
we're gonna
help her and
place
reaches into an old jar, pulling
the
out
egg in
several
here.
odd items, one of which
Uh,
was a strange stone with a large hole through the middle. And Miss Pink tells her that they can be good for bad things sometimes. Coraline takes the rock and tells them goodbye. Later, she looks out at the fog through her window, clutching the stone and seeming somewhat excited about the supposed danger she might be in. Chapter 3. The next day, the fog vanished and the sun came out. Coraline's mother takes her into town to buy her new school clothes, dropping her father off at the train station along the way, as he has business elsewhere. She ignores Coraline's more interesting choices of clothing, like bright green gloves or boots shaped like frogs, and instead buys her boring clothes that are a little too big. When they get home, the fridge is nearly empty other than a single tomato and a moldy piece of cheese, so Coraline's mother decides to head to the store to get some groceries, and Coraline asks to stay behind. Once again, she's alone and bored. After reading a book about people from a far-off country and their strange silk dyeing rituals, she gets another idea. She grabs the key to the
Idea,
drawing room
smart
door
wood.
from the kitchen and unlocks it, though something very strange happens this time. Instead of bricks on the other side, the door opens into a dark hallway. Inside is a cold and musty smell, like something very
Maybe
old
not.
and very slow.
It's-
After a moment of looking into the blackness, Coraline
manual.
walks through the door. She wonders what the empty flat on the other side will be like, but when she finally makes it, it seems oddly familiar. It's got the same carpet
maybe
and
there's-
even the same photo in the hallway. Somehow, she ended up back in her own home, as if she never left. A woman then calls her from the kitchen. She looks a little like Coraline's mother, only her fingers are too long and never stop moving, and her dark red fingernails were curled and sharp. The woman turns around telling her that it's lunchtime, and it's a frightening image. Instead of eyes,
the other
she
way.
has buttons sewn in their place. She tells Coraline that she's her other mother, and urges her to tell her other father that it's lunch.
That is.
Imagine opening a superhero comic and the very first thing you see is a murder. No giant battle, no hero saving the day. Just a dead
Brad
body lying on the
Hughes.
sidewalk. That's how Watchmen begins, and somehow it only gets crazier from there. People have called this the greatest graphic novel ever written. It's inspired movies, TV shows, and pretty much every dark superhero story that came after it. So today I'm walking you through the story, the characters, and the ending that still splits people into two camps. Let's get into it. Our story begins on the 12th of October 1985, with a man cleaning off blood from the sidewalk after someone was thrown off the side of a building to his death. Two police officers are investigating the crime scene, but they're not sure if this was just a burglary gone wrong or a hit job. The guy who was killed was named Edward Blake, and he was in good shape for someone his age, which means there could have been more than one attacker.
Yeah.
The two cops don't want to attract too much attention to their case because they don't want masked vigilantes like Rorschach getting involved. Apparently, the government passed the Keene Act in 1977, forbidding anyone from being a vigilante. But Rorschach never retired, and he's even wanted by the police for 2 counts of murder. Nonetheless, Rorschach gets involved after finding a smiley face butler on the streets. He climbs inside the guy's apartment and starts going through his things, looking for possible clues. He finds a secret room where Edward Blake
fucking
was
weird.
hiding a costume, revealing that he used to be the comedian, one of the members of the Minutemen, the first superhero team in history. Next, Rorschach visits Dan Dryberg,
Shit.
also known as the Night Owl II. The two of them used to be teammates in the second generation of heroes, known as the Crime Busters. The comedian had been working for the government since 1977, knocking over Marxist republics in South America. Maybe this was a political killing. Maybe. But Rorschach thinks that someone's picking off costume
Can we
heroes
mess
one
with this
by
guy?
one,
Like,
and he's just getting started.
probably not
Rorschach
yet.
wanted to give him a heads up to
Soon.
watch his back, in case his theory is correct and somebody's gunning for masks. Dryberg quit fighting crime, but he still keeps his night owl costume inside his secret cave underneath his home.
Damn.
Next, Rorschach goes into a bar filled with the lowest scum society has to offer. The bartender knows him and is scared of him, begging him not to kill anyone. He picks on a random guy and starts breaking off his fingers, demanding to know if they have any information on who killed Edward Blake, but nobody knows anything. He visits Adrian Veidt next, also known as Ozymandias and former member of the Crime Busters, the self-proclaimed smartest man in the world, a former hero turned successful businessman. Rorschach doesn't trust him and accuses him of being a sellout, saying he set up a company selling posters, diet books, and toy soldiers based on himself. Nonetheless, he gives him the
That's a
same
good
warning
spot,
he gave
like-
the Night Owl to watch his back because someone's gunning for masks. The next person he visits
mockery.
is Dr. Manhattan, the only hero with actual superhero powers. He lives together with Lori Juspetchik, also known as Silk Spectre 2, inside a military base where they work for the government. Rorschach calls her Miss Jupiter, but she hates that name because her mother used to use it, trying to hide the fact that she was Polish. Dr. Manhattan isn't too concerned with the comedian's death, since a living body and a dead body contain the same number of particles. Structurally, there's
I
no
think it
discernible
is.
difference.
Oh no, I
Laura
thought it was
doesn't
like a
care either because the
mimosa.
comedian tried to her mother when they were in the Minutemen. He was
Water
a monster,
pole. Do
and
I
he
have
even
one?
broke a
Yes.
few of her ribs. She's getting really upset by their conversation, so
Do your
Dr.
job.
Manhattan teleports him outside the base. Lori says she doesn't like Rorschach. He's sick inside
Hit
his
on that
mind,
thing.
and she doesn't like the way he smells or that horrible monotone voice. The sooner the police put him away, the better.
Because you did that,
However,
I'll give
he
you.
did mention Dan Dryberg, and Lori gives him a call, wondering if he'd want to have dinner tonight. Rorschach talks to himself and says that on Friday night, a comedian died in New York. Someone threw him out of a window, and when he hit the sidewalk, his head was driven into his stomach. Nobody cares but him. The United States and Russia are on the brink of war. Millions will perish in sickness and misery. But why does one death matter against so many? Lori had a great time with Dryberg. The military is keeping her locked up with Dr. Manhattan in order to keep him relaxed and happy, so she welcomed a night out. They talk about a guy who pretended to be a supervillain so he could get beaten up. His name was Captain Carnage. One time she started beating him after he tried to rob a jewelry shop, but he was enjoying it and getting off on it. Dryberg remembers what happened to him. Apparently he tried the same move on Rorschach, but Rorschach dropped him down an elevator shaft. This puts Lori in a good mood, and she can't stop laughing about it even though it isn't funny. The comedian's funeral is finally taking place, and all of his former friends and teammates are showing up to attend, but not Lori. She still hates him for what he did to her mother and visits her instead. She's 65 years old now, living inside a
I gotta
retirement home,
listen to this
but she
story
doesn't hold a
again,
grudge.
'cause it's super
It's
interesting.
been like 40 years since the comedian tried to
can't
kill
come.
her, but her daughter doesn't understand how she can just move on. Apparently, Blake
sorry.
did some horrible things during the Vietnam War. John told her about him. Laurie's mother received a present. It's a comic book from an old fan from when she used to be Sally Jupiter. It's a porn
Sally
comic
June?
book they did in the 30s and 40s about her, and she thinks it's kind of flattering, but Laurie doesn't agree. We see a memory of when the Minutemen did their first photo shoot together. Most of the heroes were there. Sally goes into another room to change, but Blake follows her and starts hitting on her. She turns him down, so he gets violent and starts
space.
punching and kicking her until
Probably.
she drops to the ground. He then pulls his pants down and wants to her, but Hooded Justice walks in and starts beating him up. He gives him a proper beating and then asks Lori to get up and cover herself up. In the present, she gets into an argument with her daughter, who doesn't understand how she's not bothered by the Blake's image, who is regarded as a hero when in fact he was a piece of shit. But her daughter's image isn't any better. She's sleeping with a walking H-bomb. In the past, Nelson
What's an
Gardner,
H-bomb?
also known as Captain Metropolis, got most of the heroes together and formed the Crime Busters. There hasn't been another organization of masked adventurers since the Minutemen disbanded in 1949, claiming that new social evils emerge every day: promiscuity, drugs, campus subversion, you name it, and he wants them to band together and fight for what's right. But the comedian says his idea is bullshit. They want to play cowboys and Indians and run around like headless chickens. Ozymandias thinks that with the right person coordinating the group,
Let's
they
capture
could do
this
good
lead.
things. It doesn't require a genius to see that America has problems that need tackling. The comedian still thinks they are wasting their time. It doesn't matter what they do, because in 30 years, the nukes are gonna fly like Maybugs and destroy everything.
Die.
Rorschach is
Oh,
the
man,
only
how
one
did
who
I-
brought flowers, while Dr. Manhattan remembers something that happened in Vietnam. The United States had won the war, and there was a big celebration, but Blake couldn't wait to get back home and leave this dump. But during the war, he got involved with a local woman and got her pregnant, and she wanted them to be together. When he refused, she got upset and hurt him with a broken bottle of beer,
I
so
have
he
some
lost
luck
his temper
here.
and shot her point blank. Dr. Manhattan was right there. He could have done
Yeah,
something to
Dr.
stop him.
Manhattan.
He could have turned the gun
Naked
into steam
guy,
or the
remember?
bullets into mercury, but he didn't.
Fucker
Blake
killed
says he doesn't
one of
give a
my
damn
favorite
about
characters
human beings.
too.
He's watched him, and he's drifting
Made
out
me
of touch,
sad.
and God help them
Sad.
when he loses control. The Crime Busters' first mission was to deal with riots,
Really
which were
cold
appearing
here
all over
too,
the
I gotta
country,
remember.
but the people hated them, saying they don't want vigilantes, they want regular cops. The people didn't trust them, because who do they answer to? Who watches the watchmen? The funeral ends and everyone says goodbye, but there is a mysterious person attending who sits in the back. Rorschach follows him home and attacks him, accusing him of being Moloch, an old villain whom they've fought many times. Rorschach thinks he could be the one who killed the comedian, but the old man swears he didn't do it. though he did see him 1 week before his death. He just showed up one night, sat on
With a
his bed,
clone.
and started talking. He mentioned Dr.
I know what
Manhattan
that
and
is.
thought he was dangerous, saying he didn't know which way he'd jump if somebody messed with him. He was upset and kept mentioning some secret island where they have writers, scientists, and artists doing horrible things. He wasn't a nice man himself. He killed women and children, but nothing compares to the things they
Son of
do
a
on the
bitch.
island. He just left after that, without explaining what he meant. Moloch says he's a changed man now and just wants to live in peace because he doesn't
Where do I
have many
capture
days
one of
left.
those?
He's got cancer. Rorschach returns to the cemetery to pay his last respects quietly, without fuss, remembering Blake's life and how violent lives end violently. People like them never die in bed. They're not allowed. Dr. Manhattan and Laurie are making love, when suddenly, he clones himself and now she's making love to 2 people, but he didn't warn her beforehand, and the whole experience freaks her out. John says he just wants to pleasure her, but instead of turning her on, it totally ruined her mood. She puts on her clothes and goes into the next room, where another clone of John is working on something important. She's angry that instead of being in the moment with her, he was also working and doing something else, so she storms out, claiming their relationship is over. Somewhere else, Mrs. Janie Slater is talking to a journalist working for the
way a
Nova Express
legendary
newspaper,
one.
claiming she was Dr. Manhattan's first girlfriend, but he dumped her after 3 years together to be with a 16-year-old who ran around in her underwear. Apparently, she has cancer now, so she lights another cigar, saying it doesn't matter anymore if she
Can't
smokes
see.
another one. Laurie is visibly upset, and she goes to Dan Dryberg's home, who was just about to leave home and visit Hollis Mason, also known as the First Night Owl. She tells
Wait,
him
what
what
am I getting
happened,
into?
that she and John have had many fights in the 20 years they've been together, but tonight was too much for her. She thinks he's not even bothered that she left and is probably getting dressed because he's getting interviewed on TV. She was right, because Dr. Manhattan puts on a fancy suit and then teleports inside ABC's headquarters. A man wearing a fancy suit and glasses introduces himself, claiming his name is Forbes and he works for Army Intelligence. He warns him about which topics to talk about
Chopped
and what
his
to
wood.
avoid. Dryberg left his apartment to meet with Mason, and Laurie is accompanying
wood.
him, but the 2 of them are attacked on the streets by a gang of thugs. Unfortunately for them, they had no clue who they were dealing with, taking on real-life superheroes who are aching to let off some steam. During the interview, the reporter who was talking
Hardwood.
to Miss Slater says
Searching.
that Dr. Manhattan's ex-girlfriend has cancer now. In fact, many people who have come in contact with him over the years have cancer now, suggesting that he might be giving people cancer. Laurie and Dryberg deal with the attackers, and it was one hell of a rush. The reporters are swarming around Dr. Manhattan, asking if the allegations are true, but he's being overwhelmed by the entire situation and asks everyone to leave him alone. Of course, the people refuse, so he teleports everyone outside of the building, leaving him in an empty room. Laurie thanks Dryberg for talking to her and then goes back to the military base to think things over to see if she's willing to give her relationship another try. Dr. Manhattan returns back to the base and finds a guy who is putting radiation warning signs
Nah, I
on the
don't
door.
see
He
anything.
takes his clothes off and tells the
Anything?
guard that he's going to Arizona
think
and
I'm
then
blind
straight
as
to
fuck.
Mars. The man thinks he was joking, but he wasn't. He arrives in the desert in Arizona, where an old bar used to be, and glances over a picture of himself and Mrs. Slater back when he was still human. After getting what he came here for, he surrounds himself with a beam
man.
of blinding energy and teleports straight to Mars. Laurie returns home as well,
Maybe
but
the
she has no clue
guy-
what's going on and why soldiers are going through her things. Forbes tells her what happened,
Maybe someone
that
buy,
Dr.
you know,
Manhattan
Bell's
left Earth and went
hardwood.
to Mars, and that she should get tested for cancer.
That out.
Dr. Manhattan was the United States' greatest ally and a deterrent weapon against Russia. But now that he's gone, the Russians have invaded Afghanistan and they plan to go into Pakistan next and then Europe. The president is informed about a possible nuclear war with Russia and is shown multiple scenarios of what would actually happen. Meanwhile, Dr. Manhattan is walking on the surface of Mars, where finally nobody can disturb him anymore, and he just sits alone thinking. The outcomes of nuclear war are devastating, but the president wants to give it a week before bringing out the big guns. John's father used to be a watchmaker, and he was learning the craft, following in his father's footsteps. But in 1945, the Americans dropped the first atomic bomb on Japan and destroyed an entire city, which changed everything. From that moment forward, his father wanted him to quit watchmaking and become an atomic physicist, claiming it's the future. In 1958, he graduated with a PhD, and in 1959, he got a job at the Gila Flats Research Institute.
job,
Wally
buddy.
Weaver is an assistant and is showing him around the facility, claiming they are working on the intrinsic field experiments to prove that there's some field holding stuff together apart from gravity. He shows
A
him the
good
test vault
spot.
where they try to separate objects from their intrinsic fields. No radiation gets out because they've got
Imagine.
lots of new safety features. After the tour, they headed to a nearby bar to have a few drinks, and this is where John met Janie Slater, the first girlfriend he ever had, who later got cancer. They quickly hit it off, and he asked her out on a date, but while they were visiting an amusement park, she dropped her watch on the ground and someone stepped on it. Since he knew how to fix watches, he offered to repair it for her. It should be a piece of cake. 1 month later, their relationship was going perfectly, and he even fixed
Legendary
her
one.
watch, but he left it in the pocket of his lab
No.
jacket, so he went to the institute to get it. They were resetting the
Not
intrinsic field chamber this morning, so he left his lab coat inside. He goes inside the machine to get it, but the door closes behind him. It was set on an automatic timer for the experiment that afternoon, and because of the new safety features, they aren't able to shut it down. In just a few moments, his body will be disintegrated, so Janie leaves the room because she can't stand to see her boyfriend die like that. Just moments before the machine starts, he remembers the watch in his pocket, so he stares at it. All the atoms in the test chamber are screaming at once, and the light is taking him to pieces.
Waste.
Everyone thinks he was killed, but 1 month later, part of him appears in the institute, though the scientists think
Actual
it's some kind of
waste.
ghost.
That's
It takes a few months before he was able to fully reconstruct
hey.
his body after it was destroyed, but in the end, he was successful
don't.
and became something else, a godlike
This
being
gives you
with blue
140
skin.
power.
The story
this
keeps jumping
one-
from the present to the past. John is able to see the past as if it's the present and vice versa. In the past, Janie was
200
scared,
power.
scared of what he'd become and how fast things are changing. But he reassured her that he still loves her and nothing's changed. He'll always want her. But he knew that it was a lie. The institute went public with his accident, and they wanted him to
Well,
wear a
it's tree
costume with the
lighting.
atomic power symbol. But he thought the hydrogen atom symbol would be more appropriate, so he tattooed one on his forehead. They showed a demonstration of his powers, proving that he can dismantle weapons just with his thought and
This
destroy
guy.
tanks by shooting energy from his hands. He was given the codename Dr. Manhattan, and he was quickly recruited by the United States Army. He attended a charity event where he met other heroes, but he had nothing in common with them. The only one he found interesting was Ozymandias. He started fighting crime and became a superhero, and in 1961 he met the president, John Kennedy. 2 years later,
Hello.
the president was assassinated, and he told Janie that he knew it would happen, but she was furious
you
because
got?
he didn't do anything to
No.
prevent it. The story keeps jumping
No
back and
hardwood.
forth
Ah,
from the
hardwood.
present to the first meeting of
Fuck
the Crime
yeah,
Busters.
okay.
That's when he met Lori for the first time, when she was just 16 years old. He started dating her behind Janie's back, and she was furious, calling him a creep for dating jailbait. In January 1971, President Nixon asked him to intervene in Vietnam, and within 2 months' time, he had helped win the war. That's when he met the comedian, whom he found interesting. He'd never met anyone so deliberately immoral. The Viet Cong was surrendering, and some were even asking to surrender to him personally, which reminded him of how the Japanese were reported to have viewed the atomic bomb after Hiroshima. Ozymandias had quit the Crime Busters and become a successful
Thank
businessman,
you.
so he invited John and Lori to his Antarctic retreat. This place was amazing. Apparently, technology had advanced tremendously thanks to John's contributions. In 1977, there were many riots happening all over the country, so Dr. Manhattan was sent to calm the spirits. When the people refused, he teleported everyone into their homes, but 2 people died from heart attacks. Because of his and other masked vigilantes' interferences, the government passed a new law which outlawed superheroes. Everyone was forced to surrender.
Okay,
Everyone
first of
except
all, we're
Edward
going
Blake,
back
who
home.
still worked for the government, and Dr. Manhattan, who was a vital part of the country's defense. He's tired of Earth and its people. He's tired of being caught in the tangle of their lives. So he's come to Mars, to a place without clocks, without seasons, without hourglasses to trap the shifting
Dr.
pink sand
Manhattan
of the
was a
planet.
Chad,
He starts
that is
building something,
fair.
a strange building made out of pink sand, hardened to glass,
Now we
which
can
glitters in
build.
the sun's light. Rorschach visits
Refined
Moloch a
metal
second
chip.
time in the middle of the night, accusing him
First
of hiding
ever
something. The journalist who
refined
claimed
metal
that
chip.
Dr. Manhattan gave people cancer mentioned his name, alongside Janie Slaters and other people who've
Feel
been in
like he-
contact with Dr. Manhattan trying to force him into exile. This means that someone made a list, getting rid of heroes one way or another, and Rorschach wants to know who's behind it, but the old man doesn't know anything. Somewhere else, a father killed both of his children in front of his wife and then took his own life, fearing that nuclear war between Russia and the United States is imminent. The guy was probably batshit crazy, and the 2 detectives who investigated the comedian's death were sent to the house. Lori was kicked out of the military base after Dr. Manhattan left for Mars, so Dryberg invites her for lunch. He offers her a place to stay inside his house. He lives alone and has plenty of space, so she accepts out of desperation. Rorschach takes off his mask and goes to have lunch while watching the city and its
Love
people.
Rorschach.
Nobody knows his true identity without the mask, and he can mingle without attracting attention. He sees Lori and Dryberg leaving the restaurant and wonders if they're having an affair. Maybe she engineered Dr. Manhattan's exile to make room for a new boyfriend. Also, she hated the comedian. Meanwhile, Adrian Veidt is leaving his building discussing business with his beautiful assistant when out of nowhere
Hello.
someone tries to shoot him. Unfortunately, he only
First.
manages to shoot the assistant and Veidt attacks him with a gold object. The police arrive and ask him to stand down, but Veidt claims the attacker is trying to ingest a poison capsule, so he tries to stop him. This incident reinforces Rorschach's theory that someone is trying to kill masked heroes, taking them out one by one. Moloch left him a note in the alleys. Maybe he has some piece of information, so he puts back on the mask and goes to talk to him. Meanwhile, someone calls the 2 detectives and gives them a free tip, asking if they want to catch a raw shark. Rorschach arrives at Moloch's home, but someone was
Much
already
need
there and put
for
a bullet through his head.
building.
Suddenly, the cops arrive and ask him to surrender, or else they're gonna come in guns blazing.
Okay, we just
Someone
gotta
framed
build
him for Moloch's
high-quality
murder,
cloth,
so he fights
so we
back
build
trying to
this-
escape. He starts by setting some cops on fire, but the
Oh,
place
I
is
go build it.
engulfed in flames and he runs upstairs. There's no way out, so he jumps through the window.
High
He's already
quality
several
cloth.
stories high and falls down violently. He lands straight into the cops' hands, who pin him to the ground and remove his mask, curious to see who's hiding underneath. But this
wool.
makes him extremely mad, demanding they give him his face back. Rorschach was arrested and taken to prison, where Dr. Malcolm is trying to discern if he's crazy or not. Without the mask, Rorschach doesn't answer unless he's called by his real name, Walter Joseph Kovac. When he was just a kid, he
Bored.
walked in on his mother, who was working as a prostitute. The guy had no
Hardwood.
idea she had
Nails.
kids and decided to leave, claiming he gets enough of this crap at home. His mother was furious and started beating
Fiber.
him, saying she should have had an abortion and calling him slow. Walter is being taken back to his cell, but everyone knows who he really is
We
and
have
threatens
probably
him from their
enough wool
cells.
there.
They want to do unspeakable things to him, like cut his tongue out and shove it in his mouth, while others threaten to hit him from behind. This triggers a memory of when he was a kid
Ooh, look
again,
at this.
being bullied by older kids on the block. He lost his temper and attacked one of them, stabbing him in the eye with a cigar and then biting his face like a wild dog. Dr. Malcolm continues his studies, and Walter decides to tell him the real reason he became Rorschach. After his mother was killed, he became an
Have high
unskilled
quality
manual worker
cloth.
in the garment industry.
Wool.
In 1962, a special
Nada.
order for a women's dress came. The customer was a young girl with an Italian name. She never collected the dress, but he
No
later
idea.
read in the newspaper that the girl was then killed by someone, while the neighbors refused to call the cops. Some of them even watched the whole thing. That's when he knew how people actually are, so he took the remains of her unwanted dress home and made it a face that he could bear to look at in the mirror. Walter is attending lunch in the cafeteria when one of the inmates sneaks up behind him and threatens him.
What
He takes a
buy?
food tray and spills it in the man's face, burning him with boiling oil and mutilating him. Even
Hello?
after joining the Crime Busters, Walter still didn't see himself as Rorschach, but he considered what they were doing as soft. Beating evil people up wasn't
Oh.
enough, and only the comedian
Other.
understood how the world actually was. He understood people and society and what was happening to it. In 1975, someone kidnapped a little girl. She was 6 years old. The kidnappers believed she was connected to a rich family, but they made a stupid mistake. Her father was a bus driver with no money at all. He started investigating and found out where the kidnappers had taken the little girl, but she was already killed and the dogs were feeding on her bones. He ambushed one of them and tied him up, then he poured gasoline on the floors and lit everything on fire. He gave the man a saw to cut off his own hand and escape, but
Probably.
nobody came out
Get
of the
in
building.
there,
He
boy.
just stood there and watched it burn. That's when he became Rorschach. Laurie is staying with Dryberg now, and one night she sneaks downstairs into his secret lair and goes inside his airship.
Alright,
She's looking
you
for
can
the
register
dash lighter to
potty
light her
poles,
cigar,
blah, blah.
but she accidentally activates the
Build
flamethrowers.
three
She
big
starts a
ass,
massive fire, and Dryberg rushes downstairs to see what just happened. He manages to put out the fire, and luckily there's no severe damage caused to the airship. Dryberg used to be Night Owl, and he
please.
kept most of his old costumes and gadgets, which Laurie finds fascinating. He was lucky because his dad was in banking, and when he died,
Maybe
he
a
left him
room
a lot
above.
of money, which he found surprising because he always seemed disappointed.
No, I have
in
an
him.
idea.
They go
Yeah,
inside
please.
the airship together, and he starts checking the ship's controls and weapons, while she keeps digging through his stuff. Hollis Mason, also known as the first Night Owl,
Oh.
was his hero. He was retiring when Dryberg was starting out, so he wrote him and asked if he could carry on his name. He remembers visiting his garage that first time and how awestruck he was. He regretted the Crime Busters falling apart, but eventually he realized that the comedian was right. It's all crap dressed up with a
Just
lot of flash and
temporarily,
thunder.
we're
Who
just
needs
gonna build it.
superheroes and all this hardware to catch hookers and purse snatchers? Next, he shows her a pair of glasses which allow you to see in the dark, and she's
Three.
completely
There we go.
amazed at how good they are. This is fabulous. This must be what it's like having powers, special vision like that. It must be so strange being John. He can literally see neutrinos. He wonders if she misses him. But even while they were together, he was never really there. There was no real human contact, no physical contact. She was so lonely. They go back upstairs and
Thank
watch
God.
the news. Russia has brought its military forces closer to Pakistan's borders, and
Tell
Pakistan is
him-
calling on the United States to intervene. In other news at
Put
home,
some eggs in
police
there.
stopped searching for missing writer Max Shea, having
Got
failed to open any new
bunch
lines
of
of
scorching
investigation. This
eggs.
guy went missing 2 years ago. Next, we see news from the New York Institute for Extraspatial
Incubate
Studies,
this
where scientists
logic.
are trying to open new dimensions.
Bulldoze.
Dr. Ed Corey
Nice.
is
I
happy
think
to announce that
don't
they
have
are
him yet.
expecting early success in their search for extra-dimensional
bag
energy
here, and then we
sources,
just
while the TV switches to
put 'em there.
Ozymandias performing an acrobatic gymnastic demonstration. Laurie hits on Dryberg and
We
slowly
need
starts
eggs.
kissing him.
Right.
He gets on top of her and they're about to make love, but for some reason he can't get it up, so they spend the night cuddling.
What else we
He
gotta
dreams
do?
about her, but he's
Yeah,
wearing
this-
the
we
night
just need
owl
the
costume
refrigerator
while a
now, and
nuclear
then we're
bomb
good.
explodes behind them, killing both of them in the process. He goes downstairs and puts on the
I
suit
love
because he wants to go on a
refrigerators.
mission, but Laurie
Polymer
wants to accompany
cryogenic.
him. There have been multiple tenant fires across the city, and tonight is no different. A building was set on fire intentionally, but there are people trapped inside, so they use the airship to evacuate them. Everyone was saved and there were no reported casualties. This whole night was exciting, and putting on the suit again and becoming Night Owl again gave Dryberg all the
Need sulfur
confidence
and
he
high
needed.
quality
This time he
power,
has no
okay.
trouble getting it up, and the two of them make love on the airship's floor.
Okay.
Hollis Mason calls Laurie's mother
Probably
and
tomorrow.
asks if she's heard the news
Gonna
about
get
the
the,
tenant fire and how the people
level
were
up,
saved
and then
by
we're gonna
Night Owl
build
and
our
a female
third base.
hero.
Probably
She knew it
above,
was her
I
daughter.
think.
She barely just broke up with Dr. Manhattan and is already
Oh, yeah,
dating.
maybe.
Dryberg thinks all these recent superhero murders are connected. They've even tried to
We
kill
shall see.
Ozymandias and
I'ma
managed to
save it
exile
here.
Dr. Manhattan. But in order to get to the bottom of this, they need to spring Rorschach from prison. He's been investigating this for months and knows
I
more than
think
them.
we are
Rorschach
good
has
to
made
go.
a lot of enemies over the years by putting them behind bars, including an infamous mob boss called
Okay.
Big Figure. Big Figure shows up surrounded by two of his thugs and threatens Rorschach,
I think
saying
I'll
he's
raid
waited
no
20 years for
base,
this and is
so-
gonna take his time torturing him. Dryberg is fixing his door lock once
a
again
good day.
when Detective Fine, the same guy who
raid?
investigated
I
Edward
don't
Blake's
know.
murder, visits him. He wants to know his relationship with the comedian since he saw him and
No,
others
no, we're not
like
raiding.
Ozymandias at the
Right.
funeral. Dryberg claims